How about that, Kenny? Brian Cashman in the booth, which means we have a 4-man booth. And Brian, we have to start with the Andy Pettitte news, and I have to ask you, how did this all materialize? How did this come about?
Well, I mean, it really started this winter, and it's continued since this winter. I got a call from Andy in late December. He actually said, based on a radio interview he heard with our buddy Michael Kay that I did, Michael had asked me apparently on the radio something about Andy Pettitte and, our pitching issues and whatever. Have I checked in with Andy? And I hadn't. But I said, I'm not going to bother Andy with his retirement. I said, if he wants to play, he knows how to call us, because we've always told him I believed he retired early and he could still pitch and he could help us. And if he was ever interested, we'd be interested. Andy called me in late December and started talking to me about that and said it got his juices flowing to hear me say that. And I was kind of caught off guard. So I said, are you willing to commit, to playing? And then he said, another thing that caught me off guard, he said no. He said, I'd like to work out for about 6 weeks or so and get a sense of how my body is, if it can match my mind. I'm just telling you right now, which really didn't mean much to me. He said, I'm thinking about it. But, he wasn't willing to follow through. I even made him an offer. And he said no, and it was a significant offer. It was, similar money to what he was making before, in the 10, 12 million range. And I said, if I offer this to you, would you take it? And he said, no, I'm not in. I'm just thinking about it right now. I probably need about 6 weeks. And that put me in a bad spot, because I said, well, I got to improve the club. And I actually even told Andy, I said, I'm having conversations with Seattle about Michael Pineda. I said, I'm talking to Hiroki Kuroda, so I was very honest with him, because I have that relationship with him and I can trust him.
I got a question for you, Brian. Do you think Andy was here earlier this spring as an instructor? Do you think that got him going as well?
Well, the story continues. So he said to me, listen, your job is to constantly do everything you can to improve the club. I can't commit. I can't accept your offer. I'm not, I'm not in. I don't know if I will be in. I'm going to work out. And if you make some moves like those in the meantime, I'll understand. And if I'll work out, and if I'm interested in 6 weeks, I'll connect with you. And if you haven't done anything, we'll talk. 3 weeks later, I'd done a number of things, and so I called him. I said, we're done. I don't have any room now. And he shut it down. And that was cool. And then he showed up in spring training as a guest instructor, and, for a few days. Got all wrapped up in the excitement, what we got going on, the specialty, the players we got, the teammates, the camaraderie, and then he said, hey, I got to meet with you. And so he called me into Joe's office and shut the door, just him and I. And he goes, you know what? I stopped working out for a week to 10 days after you called me, and I shut it down, but then I missed it, so I started going again. So I've been throwing the whole time since you talked to me, and now I'm here. I want to play. And I was like, man, it's like, I don't know what to do about it. I got 6 starters for 5 spots. Our budget spent. What I offered you in the winter, I don't have that now. And so we've kind of talked a lot since then with ownership, with Andy, and to the Steinbrenner credit, Hal Steinbrenner and his family is willing to stretch because of who he is. We've done a minor league contract now, and with a lot of conversations, knowing that, hey, it's been a while since he's thrown. We'll bring you in as a non-roster invite, stretch you out, and see where this goes. But we know if he's healthy, we know what he can do. I mean, what I said in the winter on that radio show, and what my heart believes is a healthy Andy Pettitte is an extremely effective player. That we have a lot of good pitchers here, but there's very few Andy Pettittes if they're healthy. So we're excited. This is clearly, what he had a chance to do in the winter with the money and wasn't willing to commit, and what he's doing now, if this works out with the money, it shows this is about, he wants all in, and he wants to be here, and he wants to help this team win a championship and be a part of something special if he can, work through it all. And so he's made a lot of sacrifices in his pure interest in coming back and playing baseball.
Brian, what about this roller coaster ride? Because you talk about this cropping up in December from a radio interview. You make an offer, it gets declined, and then he comes back again and says he wants to do it. I mean, this really is a very interesting story of how Andy lands back in pinstripes.
Yeah, this has been a roller coaster, and in terms of we just had very private, honest dialogue throughout. He knows what we think of him. He loves this organization and knows he'll always be a part of it one way or the other. And that blood got pumping back in him, and he's back with us, and we hope he'll play a big role with everything we have here. I think we have a lot of assets that we're trying to line up to take a heck of a run for 2012, and we're hopeful that Andy can be a big part of that.
Wilson Ramos is just doubled down the right field line.
You know, Brian, when I heard the news, you know, obviously you have 6 starters for 5 spots, and with Andy coming back, it gets a little bit more crowded. You're going to be patient with him, let him stretch his arm out. This probably will be something that will be revisited in April, May, maybe?
Yeah, this is something to be continued later, or to be discussed later. It's one of those things where, listen, to be quite honest, he has not pitched in a game since October of 2010. He is, you know, pushing, you know, the 40-year mark, and you know, so I know Andy knows his body, but at the same time, Andy hasn't gone through something like this, so we have to put him through a full spring training, get him stretched out. He's apparently been throwing bullpens. I think he's thrown 6 total off the top of my head, he told me.
Wow.
He actually came in and threw a bullpen the other day for me, privately, Girardi and Larry Rothschild, and I brought Gene Michael over to watch it too. Not for an audition, but just to get a sense for how he felt, because he's been doing these bullpens on his own. So the morning of the Boston game, which was a night game, Andy showed up here at 7:30. He was up in Orlando with his family. You know, you guys saw him. We were playing the Braves in Orlando that day, and he came over him and I visited by the batting cage talking further about this. And then that next morning, he drove down and threw a bullpen in front of us, so no one was here, and to get a kind of sense where he was, because he's been doing throwing, but as you know, he hasn't been doing he's been doing throwing and running and everything else like that, but not in this type of controlled setting. And putting the cleats on in the Florida sun is different than doing bullpens maybe at the house, even though, you know, it's all going to help him be farther along than he would have been. But how far away is he? We're just trying to get a feel for it, and this is something he still wants to do, and as we try to figure out if we can stretch the money and get approvals for it and all that stuff. So this has been something that's been discussed for a while, and again since December, and it's kind of taken its twists and turns, despite not even having a need in theory at all for starting pitching. I mean, right now, but as they say, you can never, you know, I talked to Hal Steinbrenner, and Hal reiterated to me the other day, because you can never have enough, right? And he said his dad always said that, and I said, you're right, you can never have enough, and especially in New York.
Well, to look at Andy Pettitte, he looks the same as he did when he was pitching. Physically, when you look at Andy, he looks in great shape. Now, it's a matter of getting his arm together, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not worried about his arm as much as getting in shape as much as his legs. Mm-hmm. You know, because I do think he's been throwing a lot. Like with his kids, he told me how he's been throwing batting practice a lot. He's done about 6 bullpens. I think today he's probably lined up on his own back in Deer Park, Texas, to do another one. That would be 7. So he's been getting it going, and don't, you know. So the arm's probably all right. It's just really, the lower half is what I'd be more worried about, to be quite honest. And allowing the time frame. I mean, the previous 2 years we had with him, before retirement, I think the second year before retirement, late in the year, he had a groin issue with a lower back and stuff like that. So these are things just, hey, you could be 25 and have those things crop up regardless. I said, but where he's at and the time off, in some instances maybe it benefits him, in other instances maybe it doesn't. It's a hard thing to get a feel for, so it's really important to, instead of, because the season's getting ready to start, let's get him through a proper process like he normally would go, full bore, and see where it takes both of us. And bottom line, if he's healthy, he's going to help us. He should. There's no doubt about it, because this man knows how to pitch. He used to be a power guy. Then he did, like a lot of guys can never make the transformation. Andy did. Just like you see Freddie Garcia has done the same thing. They know how to pitch, even if their stuff's not as great. They can sometimes will their way through it if their stuff's not there that day, or he knows what to do and how to do it. And so as long as he's healthy, he's going to put us in a position to be successful, I think.
Brian, is there a timetable? Will we see Andy here this weekend?
This weekend? No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think we're going to see Andy here.
And Brian, I'd like to ask you one question. This doesn't mean you don't have faith in the rest of the staff. It's just that you have a chance to sign somebody with the pedigree of Andy Pettitte.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's one of those things where, first to answer finish Jack's questions off, I think we think that Andy will be here in Tampa early next week, during the week, so whether that's probably Tuesday range. But yeah, no, actually we feel we have, a good, healthy, a lot of real quality starters here that we're excited about. We think that can help in a significant way, but so when, we didn't have the additions of Pineda and Kuroda, obviously, when Andy and I started talking, and Andy was unwilling to commit because he just, he wanted to work through the process, body and mind, but he was admitting that it's something that's on his mind. By the time he worked through that, we had already made moves. So then we certainly couldn't have the same conversation we had in December. Wasn't even sure if we could have a conversation at all, but at the same time, there's a recognition. This is Andy Pettitte. he's a left-handed starter that knows how to pitch in New York, that still can do it. He didn't have a career-ending injury. Just took a year off because that's what he felt was important to him at that time, and now his juices are flowing again, and he knows how to pitch. So it's one of those things where, well, you know what? Let's continue to talk. So we had more conversations, and ownership gave kind of a parameter of what they'd be willing to do, but no more. Which Andy Pettitte, a healthy Andy Pettitte, is clearly worth more than that, I think, as we all know. And it's one of those things, how do you not say yes to this opportunity despite what you have? So I'm thankful that ownership here is that committed. Does it cause, obviously, questions of how this gets handled? Of course. We don't have to handle that right now. That can get kicked down the road over time because, obviously, Andy has to get in shape. He's got to pitch in minor league games on a minor league contract, get stretched out, get healthy and productive, and obviously up to 100 pitches and stuff. And then we'll be in a position to make decisions. Who knows where we're at in the rotation in New York at that time? But I just, as I reiterate, know what a healthy Andy Pettitte from the left side, can do, and that's a welcome addition regardless of what we have. So we'll figure it out over time, but this is a great opportunity that we felt we could not pass up on, and I'm really happy that Andy's choosing to rejoin us.
Brian, you're very enthusiastic about this, as you should be. What did you guys see in that bullpen session that you referenced?
What we're used to seeing, to be honest. I mean, he looked good. He looked good. He had been throwing and stuff, and I'll let Andy speak. But again, it wasn't, even before he started throwing, I wanted to make sure, and I was like, Andy, you're not here to try out. We're just here to kind of get a feel for how much have you been throwing, and just get a look at it and see how you feel with the cleats on in the Florida sun, even though it was the morning, versus what you do in the gym in Deer Park, Texas. It's just, as John and Kenny, as you guys know, when you work out in the winter back home, and then you get down here for the first few days, the stiffness and it's different. It's just different. And so I wanted to get a feel and allow Andy to get that same feel and to give us both a little bit of information. And I think Andy felt like, he's, he was he got a little jelly-legged after about 20 pitches or so, despite doing so it gave him a better feel of, the time frame maybe necessary. And jelly-legged might not be the right word, but his legs got a little tired. Yeah. Which is good. That's a good, it was information. And so anyway, at the end of the day, that was an early morning before a long day, which culminated in a game of the Red Sox that night here at Legends at Steinbrenner Field. And we continued having conversations up until last night. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And then I talked to Andy this morning with Hal Steinbrenner and Randy Levine. And we're all in. He's all in, and it's hopefully a great opportunity for everybody.
Hey, Brian, how about some of the reaction from his future teammates, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera? Had you had a chance to talk to them about it?
Briefly, I've talked to Derek, and I have talked to Mariano. I mean, you know what? You talk to people first that you respect. In this case, it's kind of a waste of time, but you do it anyway. I mean, like when I went to Girardi at first, first my conversation was with Andy were just, really between Andy and I. And then eventually when I included other people, I knew what their answers would be, but I had to go through that process. So, talking to Mariano, talking to Derek Jeter, talking to Joe Girardi, talking to Larry Rothschild, and Larry hardly knows Andy for the most part. He just knows him from the opposing dugouts. You knew they would be like, really? Yeah, that would help us if he's a healthy Andy Pettitte. We get him back to where he was when he finished just in 2010. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a benefit to us. And count me in. But you knew that, and you knew, and it's just what Andy does on the field as a competitor. It's what he does in the clubhouse as a teammate. And but again, it's a great opportunity. He's excited for the challenge. He'll be able to speak to that here at some point. I can tell you, he knows what he's up against. He knows, like any of these guys right now that have been playing, this is a hard game that very few people have the ability to play and play well, and it's a challenge to maintain your health and consistency on a daily basis. And Andy knows what he's getting into, and he's been battling that his whole career and had success his whole career.
Brian, we want to thank you for coming up and speaking to us. Yankee GM Brian Cashman on the signing of Andy Pettitte. Big day in Yankee history. Andy Pettitte might be back, and maybe sooner than you think.